the show, so we'll see what happens. All right, so what can we do with this? We can have shared page content. We can have restricted page content. That means someone comes into the web page and they can only see certain parts of it, the website. Of course, accessing the databases and e-commerce. You can send your folks email when they sign up with your web page. You've seen that when you're registered. If you want to be ambitious, you can build your own content management systems. These are some of the ones that have been built over the years that are out there, all done with website server development. All right, so let's take a look at the first one. So shared content example. So these are screenshots. We're going to open up the actual live running one in a minute. But basically what you see here is two web pages on the same website. And one of them is at the home page, and the other one's at the photos page. And what we're doing on the server side is sharing the title, which is the title of the site, the menu, and the footer at the bottom, all in one file, rather than having it repeated for all the different files that are on there. So I'm going to get that screen up in a second here. Get that up and find it. And we'll just switch over there. Okay, so now we're looking at it actually running in the web on a website, so we can see this actual example running. And as we go from one page to the other, there's nothing unusual I haven't seen in a regular course that we're in, or just basically building something. And I'm going to come over and bring up some code and take a look at the code. So we'll just look at we'll look at the heading first. So we'll come over here and look at some code. And so here are the files right in this folder here that you're seeing on the left-hand side. And here's the home page file itself. And we're seeing basically the usage of PHP, which we'll be working with, and including another file inside of it. You can see this line 15 here is demonstrating the use of including another file. We'll go to that file. So here's our actual header file right here. And you can see that it's just plain old HTML. Nothing too fancy here. But if we go over to the photos page, and let's see, it's down here, we'll see it has the same line. It's including this header inc PHP file. So if I make any changes in that file, all the pages that are including it or sharing it, we'll see the changes. Something a little bit more robust. Go back over here and take a look at the running example. You can see the menu when we go back and forth is rather sophisticated. It's not overly sophisticated, but enough you can see that the menu choice for the page that we're on is disabled. And actually, the only three that work are just the first three. After that, those pages just don't do anything. But you can see the menu choice change back and forth. And again, the menu can vary from page to page as you use it. So if we go back over to the running example, back to the code, I mean, and all these pages share another file. And this is a simple example, but it's one that a lot of people can use for just getting started. There are many more sophisticated ways to write the code, but this is a real good simple example. So you can see that's the file that's actually being included. And if we go down to this file, you can see it looks a little more complicated because it has the actual PHP or the scripting language in about those details as we go along. If anything else, you can see there's a UL tag in here, and then there's a series of LI tags. As I highlight them, you can see they're all showing up, and then or just plain text content. So the text content is being shown when you're on that page. And then using the server-side scripting, we can determine what page we're on. And there are also many techniques for doing that. This is just an example of a way to do it. And we can explore that one and see how that one works. And so that's basically the code involved here. And if we change anything in here, for example, if we change photos, say, to gallery, and spell it correctly, have two of them. So one of them is the actual hyperlink, and the other one is just a plain old text. And we'll shoot back over to the running example. And I'll refresh the page. And you can see on every page, the word gallery now appears. So you can see that's one of the things we can do with server-side development, is to be able to start sharing content between the various pages, so we don't have to repeat it on every static page. And that's a good example right there. So let's shoot back over to the presentation slides. Okay, so you're looking at the same example, but what's different here is there's a user login. So in addition to being able to get information from the web page and send it to the server and back, we can create a situation where the user logs into the page, and we have restricted content. For example, on the second screen here, the menu at the top says log out. That assumes the user's logged in, and you can see a menu choice called My Stuff over here. Whereas on the page where they're not logged in, or the state where they're not logged in, that menu choice is missing. So let's go see that one live and running. On to the next screen there. And so come back over to this other one. And shoot back a couple. Let's just cut this off at the end. And we're going to this one. And this is basically all the same files, but we have this user login capability here at the top. It's kind of tiny, but let's see. I'll just bump it up a little bit using the, there you go, so you can see it a little better. So if I try to log in, I have to know my secret password here. So in this example, they're not too complicated. And I log in, and now I have this menu choice here that didn't exist before, which in theory would have content that was related to my membership to the website, or it could just be restricted content that I was paying for. But the idea is this is something we can do with server-side scripting and control the access to the content in many, many ways. It's just an unbelievable number of ways back and forth. And when the user logs out, then you can rearrange your page so that no longer can access that content. And I see Jacob may have been logged out, but I'm going to continue, so hopefully it's re-recording, so if you miss some of it, it will be recorded. So that's just an example of restricted side content, and we'll look at that code too at some point in time. It's more involved, and so at this point, there's no sense in looking at it. And you also will be able to do database access, so we'll be working with a database, and you can go in and type in a search criteria. It will go into the database and pull it out. In this case, the example at the top of the screen is really just showing dumping the data out onto the screen, nothing fancy going on here. I have a couple of places where I go to see sales, and I go in there and click in the month I want to see, and then they give me a listing just like this of what was sold. So, or at Amazon, very similar stuff. Yeah, okay, welcome back, Jacob. So anyway, hopefully it's recording and we won't lose it. We'll leave that up to Join Me. I tried a lot of these services to see what would be available, and this Join Me seems to have the best deal right now for doing things. So it's very quick, and I like it because you can switch from one screen to another, or one window to another, without having to go through a lot of headaches. So I kind of like it. And we'll learn some different things like how to do SQL, which is a search a language for databases. This is a listing of an entire table. I'm going to switch over and see this live. And again, hopefully I can find the folder for it quickly. Here. So that's the actual web page running live, and it is looking at a database, and this is a database access tool that we have called PHP Myadmin, and there is the actual database with the records in it. These are the records that we're seeing on the screen that was dumping them. Or we could set up a let's see what we call this, a traditional form request and page response setup. We have different ways of doing that now. We have what we call Ajax, which we don't actually have to send in the data and then receive back an entire screen. This is the traditional way. So we have a form, and we type in something we want to search for, and hopefully it will be there. And this is similar to the last one. Down here, some debugging information I'm printing out. We don't need to look at that. Up here is what we're really looking at, and we see that we got all the Smiths back in that case. There's only 5 people in this database. John Smith, and there's a Mary Smith. So some basic things, and then you can format the page with the data in any way you want, hide what you don't want them to see. Like this is the internal database record number. We really don't want to necessarily show that, but in a learning situation, we can do what we like. And so that's another example. So we can do database access. Let's shoot back over. So what do we need to do? So I've done this over the years, and there's so much to learn, so you need to narrow it down sometimes. So obviously some HTML and CSS is always beneficial to know. You can have a website server developer just get away with knowing the server side, but somewhere along the line they have to have some inkling of HTML, CSS, and even that for JavaScript. And the document object model, because you'll be writing code that actually creates those things on the server side. So the more you understand that, the better off you are. You're going to need a web server, access to one. There's various ones out there, Windows, Apache, and other. And depending on the server side web server you get, you're going to pick a programming language to get started in. And if you get involved with the database, you want to learn as much as you can about the structured query language. And there's cheats for all these things. So if you start learning them, you can certainly find cheats for anything from looking something up on the internet and just plugging it in to tools that will help you do the job quicker and faster. For SQL, although I understand it, I'd rather use a tool to help me out. So just quickly, some of the items that are out there. Apache is one of the most widely used web servers out there, but it's used in a lot of minor places. Windows IIS is Microsoft's product, and it has bigger usage in the large companies, as you can see there. There's different surveys and studies out there. I just picked some numbers off the internet and present them. There's another one called Nginx, and even Google's in there. Sure enough, one day Google will be at the top of that list, I'm sure. And there are others out there. In fact, I think the first one I ever used was called TinyWeb. It only would serve up pages. And one of the keys to having the server, why you want the server, is because you're going to want the ability to have an HTTP access. So this is actually an HTTP access that's up here. And so you can't do a lot of these things without HTTP as the protocol. So TinyWeb in the early days was just a simple one where you could start a little web server on your computer back in the old days and actually do some HTTP testing. Let's see what else. So let me get these two up. ASP, you probably heard of, active server pages, and then there is the .NET framework, and then we have what we call ASP.NET. So that would be more for your Windows environment using IIS. And the ASP.NET is the replacement for ASP. ASP was a little bit more friendly to the average beginner, whereas ASP.NET is a little more complicated, but still that's where it is. Just gives more robust choices because you can use all different types of programming languages to develop the server-side programming, whereas up here it's kind of limited to these two. This was the real big one everyone learned, VBScript, and Microsoft created a JavaScript version, which is kind of handy. And they still work. I mean, if you get a server that will set them up. We have PHP, which I learned is there's something called regressive, what's it called, a regressive acronym. So PHP is actually, the PHP, the actual name is in the acronym. That's how they do that. That's how I came up with PHP. So it's PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. That was asked in the class at Raritan the other night. And Perl, which we know we have a member that can do that one. There's also Java server pages and Java servlets, another popular combination for doing server-side development. So what we're going to focus on is on PHP. It's kind of the everyman's server-side programming language. And the basic functionality of what you do in all these is similar. It's the way they're set up and administered. So I think you two may have already gotten involved with setting up a local server, but it's nice to have a local server running. This way you can do things without having to worry about uploading it to the internet. So I'm using XAMPP, and this is just one of the latest versions administrative screen. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And you might have an in-house server on your network. For many years, I used to set up a separate computer on my network in my office and actually run Apache and Microsoft on separate servers. Now you can pretty much run it on your local computer and not lose a lot of power, because they do chew up the resources in your computer. And you can also rent them. There's all kinds of places you can rent them out there. The drawback on that is the constant uploading the file before you can test. And if you're really looking for something cheap, I heard 000 web host is a freebie. So there's free hosting services out there you can pick up with. And then if you're really ambitious, you can write your own. And access to databases, we have MySQL, we have PostgreSQL. I'm going to shoot over just quickly to Bluehost. Where do I have that hiding? There it is. Okay, so this is the hosting company, Bluehost. I probably mentioned it in class, and they're all pretty much the same. They use something called cPanel, which is some software that's been written out there on the internet for the Linux Apache environment. And so they can customize it to a certain extent, but it looks similar to most of the environments. And if we scroll down here a little bit, and I'll just wait for my screens to up. Okay, so there's database tools. So you can see here they have two of the ones I have listed already on the slide that I just showed you, PHP, PG, or PostgreSQL. Not as popular as MySQL, but I hear a lot of people who use it like it. It's a little more sophisticated. They like it a little better. So you get these different ones to look at. These are just the two. There's a lot of other icons here to just let you administer and work with it. And so we'll come back over here. There are others. I've got to get used to a double click when I switch screens. Okay, so we have Sql Lite, which can be used pretty much on most places now, even on your local servers. It doesn't require actually a database running. These two actually are programs that have to get running on your computer, MySQL and PostgreSQL. Sql Lite is an interesting modern version where you don't need to actually get a database running. It kind of runs on the fly. So we can look at that maybe as you want, but MySQL is the one we'll probably try. There's always Microsoft Access. I wouldn't try that on a production basis, but you can use IIS to hook into that. Usually use Microsoft SQL Server or Oracle as databases for the Windows environment. And even IBM is out there, and there are more. These are just some of the big names. We'll work on that one, and or SQL Lite. We'll just see how it goes. So personal web servers, here's a couple of them. XAMPP is just that they have it set up to install on many operating systems. MAMP is limited to Macintosh. There's another one I found, WAMP, which is a Windows version. And they do have what we need is, we're going to focus on Apache, MySQL, and PHP. And so Apache is the actual server. That really doesn't mean much to us. We don't have to get into the details of how Apache works. As far as we're concerned, we just need a web server running that can run MySQL and PHP on the inside of it. And if you want to really get fancy, you can get yourself probably there's a light version, but starting with Windows 7, you can turn on a version of IIS from my understand. So I'm not going to go into that, and we'll work on that one. And ultimately, you do want to have a public hosting where you're going to put these. So if you test them on your local personal web server, you often got to also check them out on the actual server you're going to publish these on, because they may have things turned on or turned off differently that you may either have to turn on or you can't. So you need to double check them as you get into more fancy things. So this is a problem. You find something on the internet and you say, oh, wow, that's cool. And you include it in your work, test it on your local personal web server, everything's fine. You put it up on the live server on the internet and find out that they don't allow it, or it runs kind of slow, or you have to go through some steps to get it set up. So you have to just make sure that you have a public hosting ultimately if you're going to put a lot of work and time into something. And that's it for the slides. I just wanted to have a little starting point on that. All right, so you also need a text editor, which I hope you all thought you would need to do some of these things. So let me just find a starting point for us. Okay, just bear with me. I get this set up. So we're going to work with PHP. So PHP has a website. In fact, let's go take a look at that real quick. I get to it by searching on Google. Normally I'm searching for something on Google that says PHP, how do I do a random number between two numbers, or something like that. And this website's been around for so long, it usually comes up in the top 5 on the list for whatever you're searching for. So there's a website out there that has all the documentation. I wouldn't suggest starting to read that, but it has anything you need to know about PHP. And what's nice about it, it's an open environment where people make comments, so sometimes you'll find down in the comment area somebody has a better solution than what's out there. But let's see, I never really go in this way. I don't even know how to get around in it this way, come to think of it. So the current, there's versions of PHP. So the current version is 5.5.5, and this is one of the things you can run into. You might have on your personal version, personal web server that you've installed 5.4, and or you might have 5.5, and on the public server they might have 5.3, and you're using some new feature. So these are the kinds of things you got to be very careful of when you're working with it. Double check the cross versions. But if we go to Google and search for something like try not to hit the keyboard too hard. So you see I was looking for random numbers, came right up on the top of the list. So this gives you an example of what a documentation page looks like. And normally it puts you into a nice category with all similar items to what you searched for. They describe the language item that we need to learn up here at the top. They give 1 or 2 examples usually. One of the reasons it's very popular because it's easy to find solutions to things. Some cross-reference. And down here, like I said, there's user members of the site that give examples or discussions, or even argue sometimes with the example that's up here. They say, oh, this is better way. So come back to what we're going to do. All right, so PHP is the programming language, and it runs inside of the web server. And basically, it's a hybrid. It's a mixture of HTML and PHP, or all PHP, or all HTML. So this is a file that has the actual extension. So you can see that the extension is normally .php. But you'll see some back in time, you'll see .php3, .php4. And they went that way for a while and realized it was more cumbersome than not. So pretty much it's always .php with the current versions of it. And of course, you got to be sure that your PHP code is matching the installation version, so you're not using anything that's not supported. And in this file that we're looking at, there is no PHP at all. Right? So that's the first thing to learn, that there is no need for put PHP into a file. I'm just going to get that file up, find it. Bring us over there. So that is the actual code file that we're just looking at. And I can share the whole screen if you like, and do it that way. Everything's going to get real tiny, but for the time being, I'll just share the whole screen, and hopefully you can see it. So you can see it says .php at the end of the file, but it's all HTML. So once PHP is installed on your web server, it can read a PHP file and it just renders it as HTML. It's what it returns back to the web browser is HTML. And if it's all HTML, all the better, which is what this one is a simple example, all HTML. In your Apache web server configuration or your IIS web server configuration, IIS has all these menu systems. Apache works with a text file. And I thought I had that open earlier. I'll look to see if it's still open. Let's see what's this one. I'll check again. I thought I had it open, but it doesn't really matter. Oh, that's right. I closed it. I made a copy of it. So inside the Apache file, I actually put it in this example. They have a couple of lines. Basically, Apache file is all these text items you adjust and change. And in here, you can see they have a line called directory index. And then they have a list of files that are following it. And this is the order that Apache looks for files inside of folders. So if you put in just a folder name with no file, it will look first for the index.html. Then apparently for whatever reason, the XAMPP has this one as the second one. And then there's index.php, and then it has some of the older versions. So you can actually edit this file, but what's important to note is on your root folder of your website, wherever it might be, that's usually automatically installed. Like Bluehost, if you open up a new account there, they'll put an index.html file in there. So you might want to usually want to rename it or delete it and create one with this name. And you can just put in there, site, future site of, or something like that. But that's the main point to see here. You don't need any PHP. So I think in one of the classes I was teaching over Raritan, somebody said, well, why would you name your file .php? And I said, well, because you don't want to have to rename the file, because everything gets SEO'd. So you got all these search engines, and they have the index.php, or somebody has bookmarked the file. So you might as well just start right off by naming all your files .php. So let's come back and we'll take a look at another one. Okay, actually that was okay. So here's a hybrid. So it looks like a regular page. So let's take a look at the code. What's actually coming from PHP is what's in bold. I'm going to random number down here. You can do random numbers on the client side. You can do random numbers on the server side. It's better to do them on the server side if there's any significance to the random number, because this way it's less likely to be foiled. And you can see we just have the places we're showing that. And then it's showing the code here, but we'll go over and look at the actual file. Oh, actually you can see both. So let me zoom back in. Where did I hide this? Right here. Excuse me. So PHP has tags. So the tag is the less than symbol, the question mark, and depending on how you configured PHP, it has its own configuration file. You either need PHP after the question mark or you don't. So I always put it in anyway. But some people just don't like having to put that PHP in. So if it's not configured to understand the tag without the PHP, then what you'll do is it will actually return what's inside of the PHP back. So the user will actually see the code. So it'll either look like this or it will look like this. That's the opening tag. All right, so you can put this inside of your HTML content. So if you're looking at this page, it's mostly HTML content. Even down here, all this funny looking stuff is just simply trying to show code. So this is really the only PHP. And then it ends with the reverse, which doesn't have a PHP in front of it. Never did. So it's question mark and the greater than symbol for the ending of the tag. And so this is showing a hybrid. The idea is it's a very lightweight page. I needed to do some simple things on the server side, so I wedged in, the way I kind of think of it, some PHP here or there. There's no real grandiose plan. building a lot of pages with similar things. And what's in here is the PHP command echo. And echo just takes the expression that follows it and returns it back with the actual HTML. And so we're not going to study this in detail, but this is the date function in PHP, and it has an argument that formats the date for you by passing various characters. And we can look that up and study it specifically, but what I did is I went to Google and said, I'd just like to show the date in a PHP script with the month and the year, something like that, and the example just come popping out. So many people ask the same questions. We come down here a little further. This is another example of PHP wedges, and here's an actual lines of PHP that are not so much wedged in. We're actually creating a variable. So in PHP, it has variables just like JavaScript. They start with a $sign. That's the difference. They're all named with a $sign in front of them. And the normal naming convention in PHP is to use an underscore where there's more than one word for the name. And then there's a function in PHP that gives you a random number between two numbers, which is kind of nice because it's a little less work. It's an older language, so a lot of things in it were built at a time when people were trying to be less, I don't know, geeky. I don't know what the word for it is, but this way we have a function that actually gives you a random number between two numbers without having to write extra lines. So I created the variable here, and then as I highlighted in this editor that I'm in, it kind of shows you where else it's used. So over here I wedged some PHP into the code, or into the HTML, I mean. So I'm using the variable there and just wedging it in. If I come down to the bottom, the one at the top creates a variable and then back into the HTML. So when you're looking at a hybrid, what you got to do is think of yourself, am I in PHP or am I in HTML? You're in one or the other. There's like two different places in the code file. And these are marking the beginning and ending points of PHP. There's no beginning and ending point for HTML. It's just everything else. We come down here to the bottom. I have a third rendition of this, and it's the same one as the one up here, but I did everything in PHP. So what I did here was actually create the variable, and I'm actually echoing the HTML back, or I'm using PHP to return some HTML. Whereas up here, I used the HTML up here is just the same HTML. You'll see it on line 33. In fact, if I highlight it, I think the software will show it to me in both places. Will it? No, it didn't. But it's in the same place, the same actual HTML. The only difference here is it's all being done inside of PHP. All right, so hybrid. I'll just give you one way of doing it on hybrid. And this is the actual rendered page. And so what we see is the number, the random number, or up here we see the date. If I view the source, and I'm in Safari, and I just released a brand new version, so I don't know what I'm going to see here. Oh, nice. All right. So I'm not familiar with their new menus. They always have to redo things. But anyway, we're looking at this, and you can see there is no PHP here. It's just what comes back from the server is what PHP did. I'm going to go back to full screen view, full window view. And it picked the wrong one. That's my secret one. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm a little rusty. I'm not quite used to using this tool yet, but I'm getting there. So what I wanted to show you that with them both together is the actual code on the server side. And we'll roll up here to where this is. And it might be kind of tiny on your screen, but you can see it right here is the actual PHP code. It's generating something. And then over here is the actual date being put in. Now, if this all goes wrong, you'll get errors, but for the time being, everything is perfectly written, so we don't see any errors. There are errors, and we do have something called an error log And on your personal server, you'll actually have the error log, and you can display the errors actually on the page too, so you can actually debug it by seeing some of the errors. So PHP errors are going to occur on the server, and they're either not going to be returned back to the web page, or they are going to be returned back. It's a feature you turn on or off, and there is an error log, and the error log will show you all the errors. I'm not sure where the error log is for this page, but at one point in time we'll see it. I mean, right now we don't need to look at it. All right, then the last one would be looking at one which is all HTML. Let's see, or all PHP. All right, so I'm going to zoom in on that. So if you're looking at this file, everything in the file is PHP. It's a very simple PHP example, actually. It's what it's doing, just echoing a lot of static information back. But it does have some dynamic information down here. Again, we're outputting the date using the PHP date. So taking it from the first line to the end, the last line, the very first line is saying this is all PHP and this is where it ends. And you can start and end PHP, as you saw in the hybrid example, when you need it. This is an example where it's all PHP. So all it's doing is echoing out a string or something that's literally a string. And you can use either single quotes or double quotes in PHP. They actually have a little different result in what can go inside of them. It's just they have a fancy way of displaying variables automatically inside of single quotes versus double quotes. So we're not going to look at that detail, but it could be double quotes or single quotes. I like to use single quotes when I'm outputting PHP because outputting HTML because a lot of HTML has double quotes in it. And it just makes it a little easier because the other way to do this, if I use double quotes on the PHP language right here, I then have to do escaping the double quotes inside of it so that it would work, and it just makes it harder to work with that way. So I tend to use the single quotes until the double quotes make sense. And you also will see that in this editor, it's somewhat helping me with the PHP. Actually, this is really not set to PHP, is it? Let me just set it. This is Sublime Text. It's a freebie. You can download it. I'm not recommending it or yes or no. It was a little more lightweight than Dreamweaver to run. Right. So that may or may not help. All right. So I'll just get rid of that whole line. All right, so it can be 100% PHP. In fact, it could be 100% PHP and not return any HTML. And let me see where I can find that example of that. I didn't have that set up as a separate example, but it's in here. We have one hiding somewhere in here. Let's see. That's not it. Oh, I know. Look in here. Hold on a second. I got to make sure I'm loud because I can start talking to myself since I'm here by myself. All right. So if you look at this one, it's echoing a variable at the end. And again, I don't want you to worry about learning about PHP and how it works completely, all the if statements and the logic and expression writing. I just wanted to get the general gist of things. So it only echoes of the contents of one variable. And actually, that variable is either going to have the word false, looks like the word false, the word success, looks like that's going to be what's in the variable. So if we ran this, if we actually loaded this file separately, it would return just that one value. So you will write PHP that just returns data. In this particular example, probably what's happening here is a JavaScript, what we call Ajax, but JavaScript is actually sending data and requesting a response, and it's expecting either success or false. So that would be like the third, let's see what we have. All the examples we have is a PHP file that's all HTML, certainly very common. And we have hybrids, which meets a kind of intermediate need where you don't have a heavy-duty website, a lot of coding, but you need a little PHP here and a little there. we have completely 100% PHP that's also returning the HTML content. And we have cases where it's 100% PHP returning data, or may not be returning data, but that's usually rare, and more than likely receiving some data. So more than likely it'll be receiving and sending back some data in various formats. And this example is just returning, I would say text in this example. We just call it text. But it could be returning different kinds of data formats that are out there. So I'm going to go back to the example we're looking at that was all PHP. So one of the things we're going to learn is the operators that are involved in PHP, and in order to connect strings together, they use a dot. So this will get you really confused because you'll be working with, say, JavaScript and PHP in the same file. So you might be writing in some plain old JavaScript up here in some place. So for example, I could leave PHP here. Oops. And then I could go back in here. And this file would work just the same. I started PHP, did all the PHP things. Then I left PHP, and I'm not doing anything, so it'll probably return one character space. We'll return back these two, and the web browser will reduce them to one. And then I'm back into PHP. But what I could do in here is do, a script. We're learning this, both of you are in this other class that we're doing, and I would do a script in here. And I certainly can do this. Now I'm doing a hybrid example. I just want to point out something. I create a variable. And I'll fix that in a second. And this is a common confusion you'll get into. If I want to concatenate this to something, I would need a plus. Whereas in PHP, I use a dot. And so that's one of the little details. Other than that, the operators are very similar. So you get a lot of mileage as you learn one programming language and you move into another programming language. There's a lot of mileage you'll gain out of the ideas. You just got to watch for these little differences here and there as they do exist. But this is the one in PHP. It's a dot. So you'll be writing some PHP, you'll do one of these, and you'll get an error message. Be confused. And so run into that. So if I was sticking with this exact example where everything's being done in PHP, I'd actually have to do this for every line. You see, so you can see the tediousness as to which way you're going to go. See, so now I've got all these lines set up as echoes back, and I can take out these two, and it's all PHP. All right, so you can certainly echo back or return anything you like. Echo is just a word that they use for sending the text back. They have some other commands that do similar things. There's one called print, echo and print. There's some minor differences. You can look them up. There's another one called print_r, and there's another one called var dump. These are PHP ways of echoing data back to the web browser for viewing and formatting. And you'll find they're useful for debugging purposes. All right, so now that I messed this up, I'll just undo all these changes because we don't need them. And I'll put files available to you at some point, maybe tonight or tomorrow. But I'll make all these files available for you. I just made them up, and I didn't know which ones I was going to use until I got started and with working with this. All right, so we've got this. All right, so what else can we show that would be easy to see right now is this is a database example. Again, it's a hybrid. It has some plain old HTML in it, and it has some PHP in it. And actually, the PHP starts here on line 16. And it looks like all PHP. It goes on and on and on and on. And then it comes back to HTML at the end. So you can decide what do you want to actually echo through PHP and what you don't. It's always your choice. And so what this is just giving you a preview of. I don't want to get you scared away, but it's just giving you a preview of actually connecting to a database. And in this case, it would be the database that's running on this web server. And a lot of this is pretty boilerplate, but you'll use examples and just follow them. I'm going to go over and run this one, and then I'll switch over to that screen. We already were there one time. And almost there. Let me just I'm going to bring you over there when finding it. That way it doesn't look like everything stopped. Let me get rid of this. This is what's in my way here, this thing. Okay, good. And let's see, we'll go in this. Okay, that's the output that's coming from the code that we're looking at. So it generates actually a big table using a table tag. And down here, I'm dumping out some of the data that's inside of the program. And it's just my way of doing things. The main item to notice is that we're using a database language called SQL. And that is the part of the language that allows us to select data from what we call tables. So I don't know how familiar you all with database layouts and structures, but I'm going to assume zero without babying you too much. It's like Excel, a spreadsheet, is a table. It's got rows and columns in it, but it's more strict. So the rows are just sequential. The columns have specific names. I call them field names. And so you can go in and say select, in this case, all the fields from the name of the table. And what it does, it goes and gets all the fields, all the records, and makes them available to the program to use. I can use this example. And this one has a SQL statement. It says select all the fields from the same table, but it adds more to the language, a where clause, where the field last name is like, and then the question mark gets a little confusing here. It actually would say like S. I think that's what the search was here, like S. And the reason for the question mark has to do with sanitizing. That's one of the biggest break-ins to your website with PHP and with MySQL is getting data from a form and not sanitizing it. So why that shows a question mark is because it's the sanitized version, but without the sanitized version, it actually would have a quote marks and the letter S inside with an asterisk after it, I think is exactly the way it would look. And we can see that by going to, this is the actual database being viewed, and it has an SQL in it. But it should show on here, here it is, it's showing right here if I can, all right, so I just let's do a search. So again, little tools will help you. So this is PHP Myadmin. That'll be automatically installed with MAMP and XAMPP and WAMP. You just have to get it up and running. It's basically the name of your hosting, your website is going to be called localhost unless you get real fancy with it, and somewhere it will tell you how to get to it. Actually, with XAMPP, on what they have is the administrative window comes up, and it's listed somewhere on the administrative window down here. See, so you can get to it. There's a shortcut. So what we want to do here, this is just a tool that's built into it, and I want to look up last names that are like S. Let's see if that one works. And then I run it. Didn't get it. It came back with nothing, so I did it wrong. Last name like S. I think I put an asterisk after it and then hit go. Nope. Oh, it's not an asterisk. That's right. Wrong language. Excuse me. It's percent. Let's try that one. That one doesn't work. I quit. All right. Well, it didn't bring anything up, but it's got what I want to see. All right. Where did that go? Went all the way over here, so it's out of view. So let me just change screens. It generated another window. Let me just find it. Windowitis here. Here it comes. So it's just the way PHP admin works. Sometimes it generates another window, and I don't know if I can make that bigger, but I'm going to try. There you go. So this is the actual SQL statement that I was trying, except I'm not following. There's something I'm not doing correctly, and it's just a matter of I'm on the spot at the moment. But you can see there it is. Select all fields from this table where I'm looking up the email address. Like, no wonder why I'm not finding. There's probably no email addresses that start with S. So if I change it over here to last name, we could probably try it again. And rather than spend a lot of time on it, just basically that's the idea. This is the SQL statement, and you'll be using those to access your database. Now let's go back and look at this in PHP just briefly. So you're not going to absorb this all at once, but the general gist of it is what you probably want to understand is, so if you're going to work with a database, you basically need to make a connection to it and test if the connection worked. That just happens to be the line for this example. You're going to have to submit some kind of an SQL statement. This particular case is being built line by line in a variable, so that way it can be, it's just a technique. You can put it all in one line if you like. Then MySQL has a way of testing the query to see if it's valid, and also not take the data coming in from the form. And we don't need to get into all the details of it, but there's a prepare statement and an execute statement, and then a way of seeing the results without having to have them all come back from the database. So imagine if you're in a database and you were looking up 10,000 records. You don't want them all to come into the PHP space, or use up your computer's memory. So there's different techniques. So again, you'll kind of learn this by boilerplate, but you got to understand why they're there. So this is getting the query ready, or the SQL statements ready, and then this is actually executing it. This is not the example we're looking at over there, and then this is binding some variables to the results, and then down here we can use those variables in our output. And you can see here, here's a loop that's looping through all the results. Just give you an overview. Don't get too involved with it. But here's the most important part of this. You're going to connect. You're going to test if the connection is good or bad. That should almost run 100%. Your connection should be 100%. Why wouldn't it work? The database has failed on the server. So you got to consider that in certain situations. And for a lightweight web server, you just tell the students in the JavaScript class, well, something went wrong on my server. But in a more sophisticated environment, you want to have some kind of a fallback if the database is not running for some reason, or someone has damaged it. And then you got to test for each step. Was the SQL statement good? Was I able to execute it? And you have ways of finding the results, whether there's an error or not, and what the error is. So all those things should run 100%, with the exception of something went wrong on the server that no one can predict. The server has a hiccup. You got your shared server. Somebody's misusing it. Times out. So we have different ways of doing this. So you'll see a lot of logic built into database access. Okay, I spent a little too much time on database access, but I wanted to get in there. Well, we can look at some of those items too. Just go over briefly and look at this busy pile of code. Actually, I didn't want to look at that first. I want to go back and look at the other one first. Where was that? Okay, that was the one I was just going over was a simple listing. This is the one that has the form and response. So here's a form. So you saw that in the HTML class where you have a form and you have a name that you assign to the field. And then we submitted it with a post. And this is the name of the program waiting for the data. So very simple example. And this is the script that's receiving that information, or is it? Yes, it is. And it has a double duty. It actually returns HTML. this is how PHP gets the data from the form. So we're going to have what they call super variables or magic variables. There's all different ways of calling them. But every one of those technologies that we looked at earlier, ASP, ASP.NET, Java, JSP, has some way to get at the data coming in from the web page. And it's classified in two categories. One of them is called post, and one of them is called get. And PHP has a variable that combines them together for convenience. Not necessarily the best way to do it, but it's for convenience. So actually they're called request, they're called post, and they're called get. It's the actual spelling that would go in here. And there's the actual name that was used in the form. We're back to the form. So there's a lot of coordination between the two. And actually we're using some PHP to test to see if it actually was sent, and if not, a little logic here. I don't know if you have any programming background, but we'll be relearning program if you don't know it. Down here at the end, it does something different if you don't have it. In fact, we can test that, tell you what that does. Probably a little overkill for this course in the way it was designed, but nevertheless it does demonstrate something really good. So this is the actual using of the form. You know, if I put in here something like this, it'll probably search, comes back with no record. And there's the flex statement. Now, if I just hit return on that script, this is the script that's supposed to return data, it's testing to see if there's that variable coming from the form. And the logic says, hey, I don't see that variable coming from the form, so I better do something else. And it's just a matter of whether the programmer wanted to go that far to make the form, this particular file, protected from someone accessing it outside of the form. Just the way that one works. And so what it does, it gets rid of all the output and changes the actual message. If we go back to the first one, and do search, you'll notice this says search again, and it also takes you back to the form. If I refresh this page, of course we have the web browser doing its little thing. Let's see, it didn't do what I wanted to do this time. Okay, it wasn't refresh, it was press enter. We actually have just a different piece of text, that's all it does. And it actually gives you a link back to the form. Right, so on an overview basis, I just wanted you to see that the data is flowing back and forth between the server and the form. In this case, there's nothing coming back except PHP is actually reading the database and formatting a table with headings, and then going through each row that comes back from the database and printing out another series of table rows and table cells to output the data, and that's basically all it's doing all the way down. And all those program works, that the coding here indicates it shouldn't be working. Some of these others, unless they're set to the right language, they don't quite work well. See, that works better. All right, so now we can take a look at another example where we won't actually, this is actually the traditional way, where you actually send to another program and it returns back another screen, basically the traditional way, and that still works fine. And then you want to get really deep into it, you get into the Ajax way. My code to absorb, so don't try. But this is JavaScript in here. And this is jQuery. And jQuery has this Ajax object that we can use. And it can send data to a form or to any program. This is the data it's sending. This is the name of the field, name of the value. Just the same way we have in a form, except now we're actually having the data coming from a program rather than from a form. It may have originally came from a form, but we were going to send it through this data. And then we have a callback. So the callback is here. This is a callback called complete. I don't want to get into the details of Ajax. It has a success, an error, and a complete. The purpose of complete is for you to, no matter whether it failed or succeeded, to do something to the layout. But basically success is the one we'll look at. So if the form worked, it sends some data back. And so here's the data coming back. So again, don't try to absorb everything, but the idea here is that we can send data to a server script, PHP script, and it can return data back. And in the example that we had done earlier, the simple example, we're just returning true or false, or success or false is probably the one this one was using. Yeah. So this is the actual program it's sending data to. So I'm going to go back and look at it. So it's sending a field called login status. Is this the right one? Oh no, that's not the one I want to look at. I want to look at the login one. Okay, so program. It's sending in a field called user, and the value is a variable, JavaScript variable with user in it. It got it from the form. We're learning this in the JavaScript class. This is jQuery actually getting the data from the form, and I just happened to put it in the variable to make the program look easier. And a field called pass, and again I use the same variable name. Could be a little confusing, but if we go look at the JavaScript side or the PHP side, you can see it's looking for that user and password variable to be coming in from the Ajax. All right, so again, we don't want to get into, we haven't learned about programming. We're just doing more or less overview. So you got a picture of what was going on. And let me just go back to the very first or second slide. Yeah, so sort of, we touched on all these just with some quick examples so you can see where you can go. There's so much you can go into, and it's exciting on the one hand, and the other hand is where do you dig in. E-commerce is more or less a combination of everything, but controlling the page content, accessing databases, sending data back and forth are things that you're going to do with this. And so let's see, where do we stand? So what I'm going to do is, one of the things you want to be able to do is get your web server set up. So you can email me if you have some questions. I can support probably quicker XAMPP than any, but I'll help you search on the internet and interpret issues if you're working with some other web server on your computer, or if you use MAMP and you're getting some issues, I'll help interpret the problem. We can do a join me meeting. I can look at your server and try to help you out. We can schedule something. I can try to help you out, or look at the message you're getting on the internet, or what we're trying to figure out. And XAMPP is, I set this up both on a Windows machine yesterday. It seemed to work. Actually, Windows Vista. So Windows Vista is, was a piece of crap. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that using Join Me or not, but it basically, it suited my needs. I never had a problem with it, but set up anything fancy, there's always kinds of errors. So since it worked, I have no problem with it, and I got it set up. I had a couple warnings up at the XAMPP site about it, or whatever one you have. So once you get that set up, the next thing you want to do is to be able to make sure that the PHP is working. So in this one, it actually has a line that says PHP info. And you can see this coming up, but we can write a program to do that, so that's what we're going to do next. We're going to write a quick program to do PHP info. It's the simplest program you could ever imagine. It's built into PHP, so I'm going to go over to here. And actually decided not to write it, I guess. I already wrote it. Here it is. It's a lot faster. We just look at them rather than write them tonight. So that's the whole program. Nope, you can't see it because I'm not there. I'm there, but you're not. Okay, now you're there. All right, so there we go. So it's all PHP. It just echoes a PHP function called PHP info. So that's what you're seeing when you click on that same icon. So you're going to need this program or this line to put on your public server. Once you get it, if you rent the public server, the first thing you want to do is make sure your PHP is working. So you can write a little script, call it whatever you want, test PHP, whatever you like, and you upload it to your server and make sure it comes back. What's important about it is not only testing your installation that it's working, but what you got. Key item is what version you're running. That'll tell you what you can or cannot use. And it will give you a lot of information about what's installed. In fact, it's blinding to see it all. information about the web server environment. This is a variable that exists inside of PHP, by the way, but it's also the identification of the host that actually came into your site. So it would say google.com, for example, if we were coming in on a Google site. And we're not going to learn all these. I just want to scroll down so you can sort of see them. Libraries that are built in to PHP. Some of the PHP settings, this is the key in here, that you might find a solution to a problem in. Most of these are all set these days to work for most uses. As for example, safe mode, whether it's on or off. Some of these things you can look up on your own. This is a library called curl. I just want to stop at one or two just to give you a picture of what could or could not be there. Curl is the ability for you to write a PHP script that actually will communicate through HTTP to another web server. For example, lonhoster.com could communicate theoretically to RaritanValley.com or .edu if they had a script over there that was in a public space. It's called curl. It's not something you're going to need right away, but do you have it? Don't you have it? This one has it. Example where it's used is for a long time, PayPal used it. They still work with PayPal. It's a way of taking an order on your web page, communicating the order to PayPal, getting the sale, and it would send the data back to your PHP script, and then you do what you want to do. I don't know if they still support it, but at one time. Okay, let's scroll down here, and you want to do graphics. You know these websites that upload graphics and do funny things to them? That's GD. Gives you the ability to manipulate, generate graphics. Will you need it? Probably not, but it's there in this case. J support is a way of sending data back and forth. You want that. XML support. You want that. Generally, they're always built in these days. Encrypting things like passwords and so on and storing them in the database. You want that installed. Generally, it's installed. There's the big one. Do you have MySQL installed? Do you have MySQL installed? You're going to eventually find out what the differences of them are. The old one, the newer one. The newer one is a little bit more secure. You want to use that one instead. It's the one we were using in our examples, and a lot of data about them, all of which you're not going to have to absorb. It's just to know this is where you look for things to see if you have them installed or not installed. Do we have Sql Lite? I guess we have it in some way built in here or support for it. And session. Only one session installed, and it always is. If it's not, you're probably not working on a bona fide web server. In the PHP Apache, in the Apache world, session is for you to be able to determine whether a user is logged in or not. In the example I showed you earlier, I was using the session variable within PHP to determine whether or not the user was logged in or not, and whether or not I could show them their page. All right, so enough on this. I just wanted to give you an idea. This one goes on for a long, long list. It's just mind-bending sometimes as to all the things that they can possibly think of that are available. All right, so I'm going to turn on the voice so we can all talk and see if there's any, or you can ask any questions you like, and I can maybe demo one or two other things. I just wanted to give you an overview tonight so you got a picture of all these different things. Before I do that, the key thing is to get a web server running up so you'll be able to have HTTP. Even though you don't see the HTTP here, if I copy this and paste it, it will show HTTP. And that way you can actually run and make sure your PHP is running, so you'll be able to check that with PHP info if you use XAMPP. I'm not sure if there's an automatic way, but you can write a script with this one line in it, or just look it up on the internet and put that in your location where you keep all your files. Now, in my examples, I'm a little more sophisticated, because you'll notice that even though I'm running a local server, I have a domain name. Yours is going to look like this until you want to get fancy. And so I'm going to go and find that there is a place going to be on your computer where this is located. And with this program, let me find the administrative panel for XAMPP. So this is the Macintosh version. It's a little less robust. You have the Windows version, is much fancier. Macintosh version is less fancy, and they have on here, I think, a way to shortcut to the actual folder. I think it's right here. Yes. So when I clicked on that, I ended up in what they call Finder on Macintosh. And it brought me to where my files are. So when XAMPP was installed, it was installed in the folder called Applications. In Vista, it installed it right in the root folder of Drive C. That would work. And then inside of there, there's eventually you're going to find a HTT docs folder. So that's the folder that is the root folder for your website. Apache uses HTT docs. It can be renamed and reconfigured, but that's what it's called. And in here is where you would put your files. For example, I do have a PHP test file in here. You can actually see it. And Finder actually shows me the text files in a preview window over here. So you can see I already put one in at one point. So your files will probably go there. Unless you want to get fancy. And you can create folders inside of this file. So if you have a little project you want to work on, you create a folder, and then you create a project folder, project A, and then put all your HTML, PHP files in there. And then back in your local host, or back in your web browser where you're connected into the local host, you'll put in project A. Although I'll get an error here because there's no files in it. Well, it actually did show me that there's an empty directory. This is a configuration inside of Apache, whether you want to let users browse your directories or not. Something that you might want to turn off on your public server, and something that you'd like to leave on your local server, because it allows you to browse around in your folders without having to get a message saying, you get an error message saying you're not allowed in. It's protected. All right, so let me see whether I did anything good here tonight. Go back into this thing, and I unmuted this. So can you hear? Anybody hear me? Or right in the chat window. Okay, thanks, Rob. That's the directory. Good. Okay, good. I just want to see if there's any questions at this point. So the presentation using Join Me seemed to come across clear enough with the internet voice IP. Was there any kind of issues? Good. Yeah, HTTP localhost. Great, good. XAMPP does some funny things on there. It has a file, so it automatically loads up this. You can rename it if you like. You can go in and reconfigure your XAMPP to do what they call virtual hosting, in which case you can create your own domain names. And if you want to do that, it's convenient that way. You can have all these different domain names. For example, if you just look at this, I can do, I call all mine dev2. So this is my website running on XAMPP, but it says dev2 up here. So that's what they call virtual host. You can set that up in a file. It's tedious to set up, but once you get one or two running, I probably have other ones that I've created over time, but I create one called Lon, was it .dev? I guess not Loon. Loon.dev. But localhost should meet all your needs. Okay, I'm not hearing you. All right, let me see. Why wouldn't I hear you? Let me try this. Different headphones. I don't hear anybody else. So let me see what I'm doing wrong. Yeah, well, good for you, Jacob. I couldn't hear it. Why is this not working? Let's see. Built-in output. Oh, hold on. Let me see. It might be in my system preferences. Turned a lot of things off to avoid echo, so let's see. Okay, that wasn't good. Yeah, I thought he turned the presentation mode off. I noticed it's a little not quite responsive when I click that button. Oh, okay, let me see. Yeah, she's not telling me that it's on or off. Can you guys hear each other? Ah, well, it may be that this thing is stuck. Let me just, the software may have an issue. Let me just see if I can force it by disconnecting. There's an icon for me to click that turns on or off presentation mode, and it's showing that it's off, but when I click it, it doesn't change anything. So I see. Okay. I'm not sure what that means. Let's see. Exit. Okay. Anybody hear me? Yeah, I get it. All right, maybe there's a menu choice. There is a help section. I'll have to examine it, but past presenter, roll, annotate, stop recording. All this is